Hello everyone, I am Vanished Signal. And before we start with some new stories, like and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down below from where you are watching this. Story 1. The Frequency. It started with a box. Old, duct-taped, and buried beneath layers of forgotten junk in my grandfather's attic. I was up there looking for photo albums at my mom's request. But what I found was something else entirely. Something that didn't feel like it should have been there. The box was wedged behind a stack of moldy yearbooks, a cracked mirror, and a dusty bowling trophy that had lost its plaque. The cardboard sagged under its own weight. It looked untouched for decades. Inside was a shortwave radio, heavy, metal, covered in a fine, almost oily dust. It looked like the kind of thing they might have used to communicate during the Cold War. Chunky dials, glass gauges, peeling labels, and frayed wires that resembled old veins. The kind of object that buzzed with a weight it hadn't earned. I didn't know what made me take it seriously, but something about it felt intentional. Like it had been waiting. I carried it down to the garage, ignoring the musty smell clinging to my clothes. My grandfather had always been secretive, the kind of man who took hobbies to his grave. I remembered stories about his obsession with ham radios and schematics drawn on napkins. He used to say things like, "Some voices don't want to be heard, but you can still find them if you know how to listen." I found an old surge protector and gingerly plugged it in. To my surprise, it worked. The dial's orange backlight glowed faintly, flickering like a dying candle, and the speaker let out a low, steady hiss, like someone exhaling behind a wall. I turned the dial slowly, tentatively. I didn't know what I expected to find. There were fragments of foreign news broadcasts, pieces of haunting music, bursts of Morse code, and the occasional warbling tone that made my teeth ache. It felt like tuning into ghosts. Then I heard her, a woman's voice, flat, unemotional, precise, like a machine wearing a human mask. 7, 19, 5, 0, 7, a pause, then again. 7, 19, 5, 0, 7. She spoke slowly, each word spaced exactly the same. Her tone never changed. There was no static behind her, no signal markers, just her voice and silence. I sat there, transfixed. I don't know why, but I felt like I was supposed to hear it. Like I had stumbled across a performance not meant for me, but now that I had, I was part of it. I grabbed a notebook and wrote the numbers down. I thought maybe it was some kind of code, like the ones in spy movies. I tried Googling it. Nothing came up, just conspiracy forums and theories about number stations that no one could verify. I brought it up to my dad during dinner. He paused for a long time, knife hovering over his pork chop. Then he said, "Some of those stations aren't for you." "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me, just kept cutting. That night, after the house had gone quiet, I went back to the garage. The air felt colder, heavier. I turned the radio on again. The same frequency lit up. Her voice returned, but the numbers were different. 11, 42, 9, 1, 11. This time the background wasn't clean. I heard something faint behind her. Wind through trees, a heartbeat, a faint whispering I couldn't make out. I wrote the new numbers down and listened for hours. The loops were never exactly the same length. The pauses between sequences changed slightly, as if reacting to me. Eventually, I dozed off in the chair. When I woke up, sunlight was bleeding in through the garage window. The radio was off. My notebook was open to a page I didn't remember writing. My handwriting, same pen. But the numbers were different, more specific. They included my birth date and the last 4 digits of my childhood home phone number, one we hadn't used in over 10 years. I flipped the page. More numbers, coordinates, Times, some marked with an asterisk. I felt sick. This wasn't an old recording. It wasn't a relic. It was watching, listening back. That's when I started to wonder, not just who was sending the broadcast, but who it was trying to reach, and whether it had always been waiting for me. I stopped sleeping properly. Not insomnia. This was different. I'd lie in bed with my eyes closed, body exhausted, but my brain buzzing with an electric tension. Every creak in the floorboards, every car passing in the distance, made me flinch. I'd stare at the ceiling until the numbers from the radio replayed in my head, like a song I couldn't shake. They didn't just echo. They nested. When the house was finally quiet after midnight, when the refrigerator hum and my parents' murmuring TV faded into silence, I would slip down into the garage. The air was always colder there, stale, like the walls were holding their breath. Each time I powered on the radio, the frequency was already tuned. Her voice would spill from the speaker like it had been waiting just beneath the static. 3, 8, 61, 20, 9. She said the numbers with just enough pause between them to make them feel loaded, like I should already know what they meant. The background was no longer clean. At first it was faint, barely perceptible crackling, like a vinyl record. Then came the tones, subtle but rhythmic. Distant knocking, whispers layered beneath her voice that didn't line up with the syllables. One night, I clearly heard someone else breathing, labored, unsteady, like they were standing near the microphone but didn't want to be heard. I began mapping the coordinates in my notebook. It became a ritual. The long desk in the garage transformed into my control center. Maps, pins, stacks of notes, pages covered in scribbled timestamps. Some locations pointed to blank stretches of ocean. Others matched oddly specific sites. The playground at my old elementary school, the rooftop of a closed-down movie theater, the stretch of road where I'd seen a fatal crash when I was 8. The sequences with asterisks were the ones that made my stomach knot. They started small, like little footnotes, but became more frequent. One led me to the back fence of my childhood home. Another to the path behind the supermarket, where my mom used to take me walking. I circled them all, underlined them, traced them onto overlays. Then, one night, I tuned in and heard her say something different, not numbers. "Turn around." I did. There was nothing there, but the air behind me was thick, like walking into a humid room after being in the cold. I swear something moved in the corner of my eye. I left the garage in a daze, heart hammering, legs weak. The door slammed itself shut behind me. I didn't touch the radio for 3 days. I tried to focus on normal life, but it followed me. The sequences buzzed in my head like a parasite. I'd start hearing them in everyday sounds, the way a ceiling fan pulsed, the beep pattern at the self-checkout. I even started hearing her voice whispering between the lyrics of songs on the radio. That weekend, I woke up in a panic. My pillow was soaked with blood from a nosebleed that had stained the sheets a dark brown red. It didn't even feel like blood, more like ink. There was a heavy pressure behind my eyes, like something had been pressing against the inside of my skull. My notebook was on the floor, open to a page I hadn't seen before. The handwriting was mine. Same pen, same shorthand. But I hadn't written it. 175, basement, now. I didn't even hesitate. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, grabbed a flashlight, and crept down the stairs. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe I thought this was all just stress, that there'd be a simple explanation. The garage light was flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or go out. The radio, of course, was on. No static now, just silence. Then something different. A voice. Male. Shaky. Desperate. "If you're hearing this, you've already made contact," he said. "You need to stop. Burn it. Now it knows where you are." The voice cut abruptly. The speaker crackled like something wet had touched the wires. Then came her voice again. Clear. Soothing. "Don't listen to him." That was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone in the room. Like I wasn't just listening anymore. Something was listening back. And I knew then. This wasn't a transmission. It was a conversation, and I had already said too much. I didn't sleep well after the garage incident. The numbers wouldn't leave my head. They repeated constantly, looping like a song that had no end, one I never asked to hear. Every time I blinked, I saw them, drawn in my own handwriting on blank walls, scratched into the underside of my desk, scrawled along the ceiling above my bed. I buried the notebook beneath a pile of other books, but I still felt it pulsing under the mattress, like it was radiating something into the room. At night, the woman's voice echoed in my dreams, only now she didn't just read numbers, she spoke my name. Software careful, like she was trying not to wake someone else. I tried to convince myself it was stress, an overactive imagination fueled by too much late-night static, caffeine, and paranoia. But that theory collapsed when the numbers started appearing in places I hadn't written them. I noticed them on street signs that didn't used to be there. Car license plates ahead of me in traffic would flash the same 5 digits. On a receipt from a gas station I'd never been to, I saw the sequence printed next to the time. Then there was the graffiti, bold, black spray paint on the alley wall by my school. Same numbers, same order, same spacing. I stopped talking to people about it. My friends thought I was messing with them. They stopped texting back. My dad, when I tried to bring it up again, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. After a long silence, he said, "There are voices on that frequency that don't want to be found. And if they notice you listening, they don't forget." He never said another word about it. I tried to ignore the radio, but it was like ignoring a fire alarm that kept going off inside your chest. Even turned off, unplugged, buried beneath a pile of tools in the garage, it was like it called to me. I'd walk past the door and swear I heard it faintly hissing, whispering from behind the shelves. One night, I turned on the kitchen sink, and the woman's voice came through the pipes. I wasn't even shocked. I just turned the tap off and sat on the floor, staring. Things got worse. The radio didn't need power anymore. It turned itself on when I got close. I tried moving it again, this time wrapping it in plastic and sealing it in a trash bin. It still played. The sequences were different now. Longer, faster, urgent. I started hearing my own birthday in reverse, my school locker combination, my old dog's microchip ID. One morning, I found a sticky note on my bathroom mirror. 5 numbers. Underneath it, "Answer soon." I hadn't written it. That's when I knew it had to be destroyed. I dug up the old tarp in the backyard, hauled the radio into my car, and drove out to the lake near my grandfather's cabin. It was the only place I could think of. The air felt sharp, metallic, like breathing in electricity. I walked to the end of the dock, stared down into the black water, and dropped it in. No splash, just silence. I waited, expecting something. Thunder, screams, but nothing happened. It was just quiet. The silence lasted 3 days. Then, on the 4th night, I woke up at exactly 3:13 a.m. My phone buzzed beside me. No caller ID, just a message. 5 digits. The same ones I heard that first night. I turned the phone off, pulled the battery, and threw it across the room. I smashed it the next morning with a hammer. It didn't matter. The next evening, I sat in my room with the lights off, just thinking, wondering if I'd imagined all of it. Then I heard the static. It came from the vent above my bed, from the crawl space in the ceiling, from the space between the hum of the refrigerator and the low rumble of passing cars. The voice was mine. 3, 13, 24, 11, 9. It was my voice, reading the numbers I'd written, then the ones I hadn't. Sometimes I think I brought something back from that frequency. Or maybe I didn't bring anything at all. Maybe I just woke it up. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if it does. But I've stopped using radios. I've stopped watching static on old TVs. I keep my phone in a Faraday bag. I don't even use the microwave anymore. If you ever find a radio, an old one, heavy and humming like it remembers you, and you hear numbers that feel familiar, that make your stomach turn before you understand why, don't write them down. Don't listen, and whatever you do, don't let it hear you back. End of story 1. I am going to get right into story 2, channel 121. It showed up on the guide one night, just after midnight. Channel 121. No logo, no network tag, no program listing. Just a blank space where the description should have been. I assumed it was a temporary glitch or one of those filler channels that come and go during software updates. But when I clicked it, the screen flared into static and then faded into a plain black and white title card. White serif text on a flickering black background. A smooth, emotionless male voice came through. Welcome back to channel 121. Stay awake. The words chilled me, though I couldn't say why. Then the feed changed. The first broadcast looked like security camera footage. An empty hospital corridor, shot in grainy gray tones with flickering overhead fluorescence. The camera didn't move. There was no ambient sound, no music, just a low electrical hum. Nothing happened for the first 5 minutes. I sat on the edge of my bed, remote in hand, waiting for something to change. Then, near the far end of the hallway, a shape emerged from the shadows. Small and distinct. It didn't move, didn't advance, just stood at the edge of the light, blurry and wrong. When I blinked, it was gone. For the rest of the hour, nothing else happened. The feed cut to static and didn't resume. I figured it was some strange public access art experiment. But I was curious. The next night, just after midnight, the channel was there again. This time, a room, a small dim space with a single chair in the center. No windows, bare concrete walls. Again, the same male voice. Welcome back to channel 121. Stay awake. The feed held on the chair for almost 30 minutes. Slowly, the camera zoomed in. So subtly I didn't notice it at first. Pixel by pixel, the fabric of the seat came into focus, until it filled the screen completely, the threads and stains visible like a map. Then it cut to black. I tried recording it, but the DVR glitched every time. Either the footage didn't save, or it corrupted. I tried using my phone to film it directly from the screen, but the footage always turned out blank. A black screen, no sound. I asked my roommate about it. He said there was no channel 121 on his guide. We had the same provider, same hardware. He thought I was screwing with him, maybe imagining things. He even joked about it. Cursed TV channel? What is this, a creepypasta? I laughed along with him, but I checked every night. The channel was always there, for me. Online, I found nothing. No forum posts, no archived video clips, no urban legends or obscure threads. It wasn't listed on any database of known broadcast signals. No one I reached out to had heard of it. It was as if I'd tuned into something that wasn't supposed to exist, or only existed for one person at a time. The broadcasts got stranger. One night, it was a laundromat with one dryer spinning. The image was looped, except small changes kept appearing in the reflection of the glass window. Hands, flickers of movement. Another time, it was the inside of an elevator, the doors never opening. Occasionally, there were people, always with blurred faces, always silent, sometimes staring directly into the lens. Once, a man sat behind a desk, reading a book aloud. His voice was steady for 15 minutes before it cracked. He started crying. The camera didn't move. The scene didn't end. Eventually, the screen just cut to static. It became routine. Every night at 12:06 a.m., Channel 121 would blink into existence. I started keeping notes. Patterns emerged, numbers that reappeared in corners, timestamps that didn't align with real time. The weather inside the scenes didn't match the outside world. There was no clock, no clear date. But somehow, it all felt like it was reacting to me. Like someone or something was watching me watch. Then came the night of the mirror. The room on screen was unfamiliar, small and claustrophobic. A single bed pushed against the wall. A mirror hung directly across from it. The camera was positioned in the upper corner of the room, slightly askew. At first, it was empty. Then, about 10 minutes in, something appeared in the mirror's reflection, a figure. Someone sitting on the bed, head bowed, hands clasped. I leaned closer. It was me. Same shirt, same posture, same watch on my wrist. But I wasn't in that room. I was in mine, staring at the screen. And then the reflection looked up and smiled. The next night, I tried to find the channel again. I flipped through the guide manually, scanning each listing one by one, squinting at the screen like I'd missed something obvious the first time. Channel 121 wasn't there. It skipped from 120 to 122, as if 121 had never existed. I tried rebooting the box, switched out the HDMI cables, even searched for hidden channels on a support forum. Nothing. No records, no mention, no trace. For a few minutes, I thought maybe it had all been some late-night hallucination. A dream I'd convinced myself was real. But then I looked at the screenshot again. It was still on my phone. The still image I didn't remember taking. Me, or someone who looked exactly like me, standing in a dimly lit room, facing a mirror that I didn't recognize. The lighting was unfamiliar, the frame of the mirror chipped and old, but the figure in the reflection was unmistakable. The longer I stared at the photo, the more I noticed how wrong it was. My face wasn't quite right. My eyes seemed slightly too wide. My posture was stiff, almost marionette-like. I became obsessed. Every night I left the TV on, camera rolling, hoping to catch it again. I downloaded multiple signal tracker apps, bought an old-school analog signal detector from eBay, and even tried using a backup generator in case it had something to do with power fluctuations. Most nights, I got nothing but late-night reruns, static, and the soft buzz of infomercials. But on the fifth night, at 2:46 a.m., the screen flickered and dimmed, and channel 121 blinked into life. There was no guide data, no sound at first, just a dark, grainy hallway slowly brightening into focus, captured in black and white. The hallway looked institutional. Tiled floors, concrete walls, metal doors with rectangular glass windows wired in crisscross patterns. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting long, jittering shadows that crawled across the walls. There was a faint hum in the background, and something else, what sounded like breathing, distant and slow. I sat completely still, unable to blink. After several minutes, a door at the far end creaked open. A man stepped out, wearing a maintenance uniform and holding a flashlight. He moved hesitantly, glancing around like he was confused or disoriented. Then, halfway down the hallway, he stopped, turned, and stared directly into the camera. Into me. His face was completely expressionless, his eyes locked with mine. He didn't blink, didn't shift. The lights flickered once more, then the screen abruptly cut to static. I rewound the recording, watched it twice again, and confirmed what I saw. But when I tried to play it a third time, the file vanished. My phone displayed an error message. File corrupted, unable to retrieve data. The next morning, I checked the cable company's website again. Still no listing for channel 121. I called tech support and was transferred 3 times before someone finally responded with a flat, rehearsed tone. That frequency isn't in use. When I mentioned I had footage, there was a pause, a long one. Then the line went dead. That night, I stayed up again. Around 3 a.m., the screen blinked. No jingle this time, no voice, just a single image. The mirror from before. Same room, same cracked wall, same warped floorboards. Only now, in the bottom corner of the frame, there was movement. A shadow creeping into view. I leaned forward, trying to see more. A figure entered slowly, walking with deliberate, unnatural grace. They approached the mirror and stopped just inches away. It was me, or something wearing my face, same clothes, same posture. But there was a difference. The skin was too smooth, the eyes were too dark. The smile that spread across its face was too wide, it stayed frozen. The reflection blinked. I didn't. Then it stepped out of frame. I turned the TV off. I unplugged it. I pulled the cable box from the wall, yanked the cords, and sat in the dark. My breath felt loud in the room. I didn't sleep. I didn't want to dream about that hallway. At 3:13 a.m., my phone lit up. No ringtone, just a notification. The word, mirror, no number, no contact, just that word. I didn't answer. I stared at the screen until it faded to black. Since then, the phone rings every night, always at the same time, always the same word. I've changed phones twice, switched numbers, reset every setting I can think of. It always finds me. And now, when I pass by the mirror in my bedroom, sometimes I catch myself blinking out of sync. Sometimes I see my reflection watching me after I've already looked away. It's only a second, but I know it's there. And it's learning how to follow. I smashed the TV the next morning, dragged it out to the driveway, rage humming through me, and hit it with a hammer until the screen cracked like ice and the frame split open with a sound that reminded me of bone. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought if I destroyed the device, I could sever the connection, cut the feed, block whatever was staring back at me through the glass. But when I walked back inside, heart pounding, hands trembling, there was still a sound, soft, low, almost imperceptible. A hum rising from the walls like the building itself was infected, static without a source. It was faint but unmistakable, as if the signal didn't need a screen anymore. I tried to forget. I deleted the screenshots from my phone, wiped my hard drives, threw away every cable and adapter in my apartment. I stopped staying up late, refused to look at anything reflective after dark, unplugged every electronic device that didn't serve a vital purpose. And for a little while, it worked. The dreams faded, the whispers grew quiet. I didn't see my reflection where it didn't belong, didn't hear the warped piano jingle in my sleep. The nights stretched long and dreamless, and I thought maybe I had won. Then my upstairs neighbor knocked. Her voice was nervous, almost apologetic. She asked if I had my television on at night. Said she kept hearing something through the floors, a strange melody that played on a loop. "It sounds old," she said, "like something from a children's show, but slower, like it's melting." I lied, said I didn't even own a TV, said I used my phone for everything. She nodded, but the way she looked at me said she didn't believe it. One night, I found the remote. It was sitting on my bed, covered in dust, coiled like a dead thing. I had thrown it out with the television weeks ago, walked it down to the dumpster myself. But there it was, waiting. I didn't touch it, just stared at it until the sun came up. Bizarres. That night, I moved to the couch, thinking distance might help. But I kept waking up to sounds. Faint dialogue, laugh tracks from shows I didn't recognize, a familiar rising static that filled the room like fog. When I finally opened my eyes fully, the couch was no longer facing the window. It faced a television. It was old, boxy, covered in dust, like it had been buried underground and dug up just for me. Not plugged in, but on. Channel 121. There was no jingle this time, no cheerful welcome. Just silence, then a single shot. My apartment, live from above. The perspective was impossible. The ceiling couldn't contain a camera, and yet there it was, watching me watch it. I approached slowly, like walking toward a cliff. On the screen, I saw myself, standing in front of the TV, hands slightly raised, and behind me, barely visible in the hallway shadows, stood a figure. Its face was obscured, like a smear in the air. But it moved. It raised its hand. So did I. Perfectly synchronized. I turned. Nothing. Just an empty hallway. I turned back. The screen had gone black. I don't know how long I stood there. Hours, maybe. When I blinked again, it was morning. The TV was gone. The couch had turned back toward the window. My phone was on the floor with 30 missed calls from numbers that didn't exist. No voicemails, just a series of texts. Binary strings. Random, until you looked closely. One contained my birth date. Another included the time I was watching the mirror feed. The last one spelled out a message in perfect ASCII. STAYAWA key. I moved the following week. Threw out everything. Bought a new phone. Found a new apartment. One with thick walls and no outlets in the bedroom. I stopped using electronics altogether, except for a burner phone and an old reading lamp. I haven't owned a television since. Haven't streamed anything. No Bluetooth, no smart tech. I won't even look at screens in public. But the sound followed. Faint at first, the static hum beneath the fridge, the flickering lights in the hallway that buzzed to that same slow rhythm. Sometimes, just before sleep, I hear the melody again. That broken, looped piano tune, like someone dragging their fingers across the keys of a forgotten song. And once, while heating leftovers, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. It was me. Same face, same shirt. But it wasn't moving, not until a full second after I did. Story 3, the signal room. When I took the overnight security job at the Wexler Archive, I figured I'd struck gold. The place was quiet, out of the way, and the hours were perfect for someone like me. Single, nocturnal, and trying to make rent without dealing with customers or co-workers. The building sat 5 stories high in the old industrial district, surrounded by shuttered warehouses and delivery bays with broken gates. The kind of area where the street lights flicker and the only sound after 10 p.m. is the occasional train groaning in the distance. The archive itself was unremarkable. Just rows of locked cabinets, digitization equipment that looked older than I was, and aisles of dusty VHS tapes stacked like tombstones. Rick, the guy training me, was a former cop who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "It's a cake job," he told me on my first night. This place doesn't even get mice. Walk the floors, check the boiler, make sure the power grid hasn't melted down. That's it. And for a while, he was right. I'd clock in, walk the same dull route. First floor up to 5, stopping only to sip coffee from the ancient break room machine and flip through dog-eared paperbacks in the lobby. I even brought my laptop to stream movies, figuring no one would ever check the camera logs. Nothing moved. No late-night visitors, no creepy noises, not even a busted light bulb. Until my 8th shift. That night, I was riding the elevator back down from the 5th floor when something odd happened. The panel flickered, and the screen displayed a 6 for the briefest moment, just a blink, then jumped to 5 before the doors opened. I stared at the panel, confused. There had only ever been 5 floors. Even the building directory in the lobby listed 5. I pressed the door close button and scanned the panel again. That's when I saw it. A 6th button. No label. Just a faint indentation where the number should be, like it had been rubbed off or covered up. Curious, I pressed it. The elevator hummed and began to descend, or maybe rise. It was hard to tell. There was no sensation of movement. The lights inside dimmed slightly, and the digital display above the door went dark. When the doors opened, I stepped into a narrow hallway. The ceiling was low, with exposed piping that dripped occasionally, leaving little rust-colored stains on the red carpeting. The air felt wrong, thicker somehow. Not dusty like the rest of the building, but dense, humid, like the space had been sealed for too long. The lights buzzed softly above me, spaced too far apart so that each pool of light left long shadows stretching between them. It was colder, too. I moved slowly, expecting a door to be locked, or an alarm to trigger. But the hallway simply ended at a small metal door that was slightly ajar. Inside was what I could only describe as a control room. It looked like something from a Cold War bunker. Analog equipment laid out on a wide desk with dusty monitors, rows of switches, metal toggles, and a reel-to-reel tape machine spinning in slow silence. Most of the monitors were dark, their screens dim and lifeless. But one glowed faintly. It showed a park bench. The image was in color but flat, almost too perfect. Trees swayed gently in the background. No timestamp, no labels, just the bench. At first, I thought it was a live feed. Maybe a security camera left running in a park somewhere. But then I noticed the leaves on the trees. They looped. The same breeze moved them, again and again. 10 seconds of footage, repeated without change. The same pigeon fluttered through the frame and vanished, only to reappear seconds later. I leaned in, staring at the image, when I heard something. A whisper. So faint, it might have been a draft at first, but it grew more distinct. It wasn't language, just the sound of someone's breath, close, like they were leaning into a microphone. I checked the desk. The speakers were off. No audio devices were active. I even unplugged one monitor. The whisper didn't stop. It seemed to grow louder the more I focused on it, curling just beneath the hum of the equipment. It was coming from behind me. I turned quickly, expecting to find Rick or a coworker sneaking up on me. But the hallway was gone. Where the door had been, there was now a stairwell. Narrow, concrete, lined with rusted steps. The walls were painted with numbers, not descending like normal stairwells, but ascending. 7, 8, 9. The numbers were drawn in thick black paint, and they seemed fresher than the rest of the surroundings. The stairwell gave off a strange vibration, like a low hum that crawled inside my chest. The smell changed, too. No longer musty or electrical, but damp, like stone soaked with rainwater. I slammed the doors shut and stumbled backward. The whispering stopped. The monitor flickered, then cut to black. A moment later, the image returned. The park bench wasn't empty anymore. A figure sat hunched over at one end, blurred, too far to make out, but they weren't there before. They didn't move, didn't turn, just sat in that looped footage, perfectly still. I bolted, sprinted to the elevator. The panel was back to normal. Floors 1 through 5, no 6th button. I jammed my finger against lobby and didn't breathe until the doors reopened. Rick was waiting near the front desk, holding a half-eaten bagel. He looked me up and down, frowned. "You look like hell," he said. "You checked the roof?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. When I opened my locker to grab my coat, a small slip of paper fluttered out. Plain, white, tucked between my change of socks and an old paperback. There was no handwriting, just a printed sentence in block letters. "You've seen it now." The second time I heard the broadcast, it was just after 2 a.m. I'd left the old portable radio on in the background while I was sorting through dusty boxes in the storage room of the radio station. Most nights, the static was just comforting background noise, white hiss and crackle like an untuned world trying to form words. But that night, something different broke through the airwaves. The signal came in slow, like a ripple traveling beneath the surface of a frozen lake. It wasn't immediate. First, there was a low hum, then a thread of murmuring, like a dozen voices whispering in a language I didn't know. Finally, one voice pushed to the front, clear, detached, hollow. It said my name, not just my first name, my full name, spoken with a deliberate cadence, like reading a headline. After that came a time and a place. Coordinates, maybe, or a description meant just for me. A location on the edge of town, an abandoned field I hadn't visited since high school. A specific time, 2:37 a.m. Then the voice cut out. Just silence again. Heavy, total silence, as if the world had exhaled and didn't want to breathe back in. I stood frozen in that dim room, lit only by a flickering overhead light and the ghostly glow of the old radio's tuning dial. The rational part of me tried to brush it off. Some prankster, maybe a rogue signal using publicly available data. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The voice didn't just sound familiar, it sounded like mine, like a version of me from far away, or from too close, slightly distorted, echoing with a texture like degraded tape. The walls seemed to lean inward as I turned off the radio. I left without locking up, without checking my phone, without even turning off the lights. I drove home with my fingers tight on the wheel and the radio silenced. But even in the silence, I heard that voice in my head, repeating my name, repeating the time, inviting me to something I didn't understand. The next night, I went to the field. Not because I believed it, but because I couldn't help myself. I dreamt of it. Woke up in a cold sweat. The field had once been a proposed development site, now just overgrown brush and rusted fencing. I parked on the shoulder and stepped out into the kind of stillness that felt artificial. No wind, no crickets. Just the distant hum of highway lights that didn't reach the trees. I climbed through a gap in the fence, guided by the weak beam of my flashlight. At the center of the field, I stood still and checked the time. 2:35 a.m., 2 minutes. My heart raced in time with the seconds. Then, right on cue, the ground beneath me began to vibrate. It was subtle at first, a low, buzzing resonance that came up through my feet. Then a deeper noise joined it, a buried hum, steady and mechanical, as if a massive engine were spinning far below. The radio in my jacket pocket, which had been off, buzzed to life on its own. I pulled it out. Static poured through the speaker like rushing water. I held it to my ear. Voices, dozens, hundreds, layered and distorted, each speaking over the other. Some were crying, others were chanting numbers. One voice, mine again, rose above them all. "You're late," it said. I dropped the radio and ran. I didn't stop until I hit the car, tore open the door, and slammed the lock. As I fumbled with the ignition, the dashboard flickered and the radio snapped on again. Same signal, same humming tone. Then that same voice, quieter this time, as if pressed against the glass. "Don't be late again." I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my room until sunrise, watching the door. Since that night, the radio won't stop turning on. Every night at 2 a.m., it clicks to life. No station, no music, just static. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes I hear things I recognize, phrases I've spoken in the past, fragments of memories I haven't thought of in years. It's learning. And I know now that it isn't just a broadcast. It's a signal. Something reaching out from somewhere else. Somewhere I'm not supposed to know about. But I listened. I heard it. And now, whatever it is, it knows I'm listening back. I was frozen in the threshold of that door, caught between the urge to bolt and the inability to look away. It felt like standing at the edge of a dream, one you know is about to go wrong, but can't escape. The room in front of me was a perfect reflection of the one I was standing in. Same metal shelving, same grimy consoles, same humming light bulbs suspended above layers of dust. But in this version, the monitor was on. Its cold, bluish glow pulsed like it had a heartbeat, and in that light sat someone, still hunched over, staring into the screen. My shape, my posture, my hoodie, their back was to me. I whispered a quiet, "Hello?" not expecting an answer. The figure twitched. It turned slowly, awkwardly, as if each motion had to be remembered first. My breath caught. It was me. A mirror image. But wrong. Its skin was too smooth, too taut, as though it had been vacuum sealed over bone. When it rose, it moved like it was struggling against invisible restraints, limbs jerking in unnatural ways. Its face finally turned fully toward me. The resemblance was unmistakable, but the details were off. The mouth was too wide, the eyes too glassy, and when it opened its mouth, I heard nothing. But I felt something, a pressure in my chest, a ringing behind my eyes, like a migraine blooming into sound. Instinct took over. I slammed the door, kicked the wedge away, and sprinted back into the hallway. Only this wasn't the same corridor I'd come from. The layout had shifted. Rooms I hadn't seen before now stood open. Every one of them held a screen. Each screen showed a different angle of me. Entering the building, stepping into the elevator, walking through the transmission floor. Some footage looked like security camera feed. Others were more surreal, filmed from impossible angles, floating perspectives that hovered over my shoulder or stared up from beneath the floor. One screen stopped me cold. It showed my bedroom. At night, I was sleeping, turned toward the wall. At the foot of the bed, something stood watching. Just still enough that I almost didn't notice it. Its face was turned toward the camera, toward me. Panic tore through me. I found the stairwell and bolted downward, flashlight bouncing wildly. Each flight felt longer than the last. I could swear the staircase kept extending, floors looping into each other like a glitch. I stopped only when my legs screamed. When I finally found a ground-level exit door and shoved it open, I didn't see the street, just concrete, a solid wall where the exit used to be. I retraced my steps, but the architecture had changed. What should have been a short corridor was now a zigzagging maze. I passed a door that opened by itself. Inside was a room filled with outdated radio equipment that hissed even though it wasn't connected. Another held nothing but photographs, dozens of printed images of me, all recent. Some were from today. One was from a moment that hadn't happened yet. Me standing in the signal room, staring at a screen that hadn't turned on. Eventually, I found a small utility closet tucked behind a set of double doors. Inside, it was quiet, claustrophobic. Metal shelves, a mop, a half-empty jug of bleach. I shut the door and sat in the corner, knees to chest, forcing myself to breathe. I don't know how long I stayed like that. My flashlight battery died. I tried not to sleep, but at some point, exhaustion won. When I opened my eyes again, it was morning. Sunlight poured through the cracked open door. Only now, it wasn't the same building. I was in a maintenance room on the edge of a construction site. Gravel crunched outside. Steel beams loomed where a structure was being framed. Confused, I staggered outside. The foreman told me the site had been empty all night. They were breaking ground on a new shopping plaza. No one had heard of a signal tower. No one had seen an old building, let alone sublevels or elevator shafts. There were no permits for demolition, no record of a transmission station ever existing on that lot. I tried convincing myself it had been a stress-induced breakdown. Maybe a dream, maybe a hallucination. But when I got home, I found my television on. I hadn't touched it. The screen was dark at first, then it flickered to life with static. Then I saw it, my face, the same version of me from that impossible room, smiling, unblinking. Behind me, in the background, a dark shape stepped into the frame. Long limbs, no face. Then the signal cut out, and the screen went black.